Welcome back, motherfuckers. This is The Shadows, part of Beneath the Shadows. This is the Patreon page, though, where we're going to have a lot of fun, a little bit shorter episodes, but we're going to have a great time together. So thank you for joining me today. Today, we delve into some of the deepest and darkest corners of human nature. Not exactly, but pretty fucking horrific. The crimes, the mysteries, and sometimes the moments of hope that emerge in the face of unimaginable tragedy. I'm your host, Travis Fenn, and today we'll be exploring a case that gripped the nation in 1993, the kidnapping and murder of 12-year-old Polly Klaas by a man named Richard Allen Davis. Bitch-ass Dick Davis. Fucking dick. Bitch-ass dick. This is a story not of just loss, but also of the failings of a system that allowed a dangerous man to remain free until it was too late. We will start in the 1950s by meeting bitch-ass Dick Davis. Might be the name I referred to him the whole time. Bitch-ass Dick Davis. And we will head up until 1993, when we will convene with the second part of our timeline, Polly Klaas's timeline. Richard Allen Davis was born on June 2, 1954 in San Francisco, California. His early years were marked by turbulence and instability, much of which contributed to his later life of crime. Davis grew up in a dysfunctional family environment, which laid the foundation for his troubled behavior and criminal tendencies. Davis was the third of 5 children born to Robert and Evelyn Davis. His parents had a volatile, can't say it, relationship characterized by frequent conflicts, substance abuse, and domestic violence. Both of his parents were heavy drinkers, which often led to physical altercations and neglect of their children. Davis's mother was reportedly emotionally distant, and his father was often absent, leaving the children to fend for themselves. By the time By the time Dick was in elementary school, his parents had separated and reconciled multiple times before finally divorcing in 1960, when Richard was just 6 years old. This instability resulted in the children being shuffled between relatives and foster homes, further deepening Richard's sense of abandonment and emotional instability. Davis experienced significant trauma during his formative years. His family's dysfunction was compounded by episodes of abuse. According to court documents and later reports from psychological evaluations, Davis suffered both Davis suffered both physical and emotional abuse from his parents and other adults in his life. He also exhibited early signs of behavioral issues, which were often ignored or mishandled by those responsible for him. By his teenage years, Davis was already showing signs of serious behavioral patterns. He dropped out of high school in the 10th grade and began committing petty crimes, including theft and burglary. His first documented arrest occurred at the age of 12 when he was caught for burglary. His interactions with the juvenile justice system became increasingly frequent, and Davis quickly became entrenched in a cycle of crime and incarceration. During his adolescence, he ran away from home multiple times, and by his late teens, he had fully entered a life of crime. His repeated run-ins with the law led to multiple stints in the juvenile detention facility. According to accounts from those who knew him during this period, Davis was often angry, aggressive, and had difficulty forming healthy relationships. His lack of stability in a home environment or any real guidance meant that he had no meaningful support system to help redirect his path. As Davis transitioned into adulthood, his criminal behavior escalated. By the early 1970s, Davis had progressed from petty theft to more serious offenses, including armed robbery and assault. He developed a reputation for being a violent offender, often threatening his victims during robberies or burglaries. In 1974, at the age of 20, Davis was arrested for kidnapping and sexually assaulting a woman in Modesto, California. This crime marked the beginning of a pattern of violent behavior that would haunt him throughout his life. Would cause him to haunt other people with throughout his life? I don't know. Violent behavior that would last throughout his life. Though convicted of this crime, Davis spent only 5 years in prison due to a plea deal. His relatively short prison sentence raised alarms, but nothing was done to prevent his future offenses. After his release in the 1970s, Davis continued committing crimes. He was arrested multiple times throughout the late 1970s and early 1980s for offenses such as burglary, kidnapping, and parole violations. Each time he was sent back to prison only to be released again after serving minimal time. The 1980s were particularly chaotic for Davis. During this decade, he was arrested several more times for violent crimes, including another kidnapping and assault of a woman, a crime which he was sentenced to 16 years in prison for. He would only serve 8. His repeated offenses were often coupled with violations of parole, but despite his growing record as a dangerous criminal, he avoided long-term imprisonment. The justice system's inability to keep Davis behind bar would later be criticized. Davis's prison stints were marked by continued behavioral patterns, or problems, both. He reportedly got into fights with fellow inmates and had a reputation for being defiant and uncooperative. Psychological evaluations conducted during his imprisonment described him as having a deeply ingrained pattern of antisocial behavior, lack of empathy, and violent tendencies. These traits, combined with his history of substance abuse, painted a picture of a man who was unlikely to ever reform. Throughout his life, Davis struggled with substance abuse, primarily alcohol and drugs. His addiction problems exacerbated his violent tendencies and contributed to his erratic behavior. Not fucking just rock hard boner while he's doing this. He might have, but I put erratic. I said erotic. Who knows? Several psychological evaluations diagnosed Davis with antisocial personality disorder, a condition characterized by a lack of empathy, disregard for the right of others, and impulsive, often violent behavior. He also exhibited signs of other mental health issues, including depression and possible post-traumatic stress disorder, likely stemming from his traumatic childhood. That right there. So, kind of an in-between, but really fucked with me for some reason. Traumatic childhood, just in right next to each other, made me think of something that my friend said to me way back in the day that really fucked with my head. And it's so like, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter to anyone except for me or someone who has my name or a similar name. But my friend back, oh goodness, in high school, so over 10 years ago now, I was hanging out with a couple of my friends one day, and one of them asked me, he goes, "Hey Travis, has anyone ever spelt your name with a CH instead of a T?" And I looked at him like, what kind of stupid fucking question is that? But then I thought about it. And if you think about it, you go Travis, CHRAVIS, or Travis with his T, RAVIS. Most people don't pronounce it like Travis, though. They pronounce it like Travis, like a CH almost. And I think about this fucking moment all the time. I think about him saying that to me, and it fucking blows my mind every time I think about it, because it wouldn't matter. You could spell my name either way, and it wouldn't fucking change a thing. It's crazy to me. I never fucking thought about that before he said it, and I think about it all the time now. So I think it was James. So thank you, James, for fucking up my head so much. But you're also a great dude, so I appreciate you in that way too. Where was I at here? So that was traumatic childhood. However, during his numerous stints in prison, Davis never received the comprehensive mental health treatment that might have addressed his underlying issues. Instead, he cycled in and out of incarceration, growing more dangerous with each release. By the early 1990s, Dick Davis had an extensive criminal record spanning nearly 2 decades, with multiple convictions for violent crimes, including kidnapping and sexual assault. Yet, despite his clear pattern of dangerous behavior, Davis continued to receive lenient sentences and was often paroled. In 1993, just months before the kidnapping of Polly Klaas, Davis was once again released from prison after serving time for a parole violation related to yet another burglary. His release was met with little fanfare or concern, as he was simply one more repeat offender in a system overwhelmed by crime. However, his freedom would soon lead to one of the most horrific crimes in California's history. On the night of October 1st, 1993, Dick, heavily intoxicated, wandered through the streets of Petaluma, California. He was reportedly aimless and had no clear plan. His criminal record and long-standing substance abuse had left him with little stability, and he was living as a transient. He did have a car, but he did not have an actual location to live. That night, he happened upon the home of 12-year-old Polly Klaas. He was a complete stranger. But who was Polly Klaas, his soon-to-be victim? Polly Hannah Klaas was born January 3rd, 1981 in Fairfax, California, a small, close-knit community in Marin County. She was the first child of Mark Klaas and Eve Klaas. Later, after they got divorced, would be Eve Nickel. I almost said Eve Nicole. And from the moment she arrived, it was clear that Polly would grow into a vibrant and compassionate young girl. Her parents describe her as having an infectious laugh and a kind heart that endeared her to friends and family alike. Polly spent her early years in Fairfax, but when her parents divorced when she was just 2 years old, she moved with her mother, Eve, to Petaluma, California, about 30 miles away. Despite the separation of her parents, Polly remained close to both her mother and father, and her blended family ensured she was surrounded by support and love. Eve worked hard to provide a stable home for Polly, raising her as a single mother in a modest house in Petaluma. Polly was an easy child to love, funny, warm, and full of energy. She shared a deep bond with her mother, who described her daughter as sensitive and empathetic beyond her years. Polly also had a close relationship with her younger half-sister, Annie, who was often seen looking after her, playing the role of the protective older sibling. Her father, Mark Klaas, remained a significant part of her life, and Polly would spend weekends with him and his new family in Sausalito. These visits were a special time for her, and she enjoyed the balance of having both parents actively involved in her life. By the time she reached her preteen years, Polly was growing into an intelligent, well-liked girl. She was a student at Petaluma Junior High School, where she excelled academically and was known for her quick wit and infectious smile. Polly had a natural curiosity about the world, and like many girls her age, she loved books, especially mysteries. Her love for reading extended into an interest in the arts, and Polly had a passion for acting. In school plays and community theater, Polly often took the stage, enjoying the spotlight and the thrill of performing. She dreamt of becoming an actress, and those who knew her believed she had the potential to make those dreams come true. Her teachers and classmates saw her as a bright and cheerful presence, someone who could light up a room with her smile and make friends easily. Her compassionate nature was evident in the way she treated others. Polly had an innate ability to empathize, and she was known to stand up for classmates who were bullied or left out. Her kindness made her popular, but not in an exclusive way. She welcomed everyone into her circle. Polly was the type of girl who wanted to include everyone in her plans, whether it was playing outside after school or organizing a slumber party with her closest friends. By the fall of 1993, Polly had recently started 7th grade and was thriving in both her academic and social life. She was a typical 12-year-old girl, filled with enthusiasm for life, dreaming of her future, and enjoying the company of her friends. On the night of October 1st, 1993, Polly hosted a slumber party at her home in Petaluma, her mom's home in Petaluma, inviting 2 of her best friends for an evening of fun and laughter. It was a night she had been looking forward to, a chance to enjoy a carefree evening with her closest companions. October 1st, 1993, started like any other day for Polly Klaas, a bright and lively girl from Petaluma, California. She was excited because that evening, she and 2 of her friends planned a slumber party at her home. The 3 girls, just entering their teenage years, were doing what kids their age do: laughing, talking, gossiping, and playing. Polly and her friends spent the early evening playing games, dressing up, and making plans for the future as they laughed and told stories. The evening seemed ordinary, a typical night for 3 girls on the cusp of adolescence, wrapped in the security of the home and the love of family. Polly's mother, Eve, was nearby in her bedroom, giving them space, trusting that her daughter was safe within the walls of their home. Well, she couldn't have known that this would be the night her daughter's life would change forever. What Polly and her friends didn't know was that someone was prowling the streets that night. Someone with a history of violence and nothing left to lose. As they laughed and made plans, a stranger approached their home. The safety of a slumber party would soon be torn apart. As the girls were enjoying their slumber party, around 10:30, a strange man appeared in Polly's bedroom doorway. He was holding a knife. His name was Richard Allen Davis. Dick Davis. Fucking Dick. He had no business of being in that house. He was a stranger to Polly and her family, a man with a long and troubling criminal history. He tied up Polly's friends, gagging them before telling them to count to 1,000. Then he took Polly, kidnapped Polly, just like that. In a blink, she was gone. An APB, all points bulletin, with the suspect's information was broadcast within 30 minutes of the kidnapping. The broadcast, however, only went out over Sonoma County Sheriff's Channel 1 within hours of the kidnapping in a rural area of Santa Rosa, about 20 miles north of Petaluma. A babysitter on her way home noted a suspicious vehicle stuck in the ditch on her employer's private driveway. She phoned the property owner, who decided to leave the house with her daughter. As she drove down the long driveway to Pythian Road, the owner passed Davis. She called 911 when she got to the service station, and two deputies were dispatched on the call. The deputies did not know of the kidnapping or the suspect's description due to Sonoma Valley units being on Channel 3, not Channel 1, like I had said. The deputies ran Davis's driver's license and license plate. Both came back with no wants or warrants. The deputies tried to convince the property owner to perform a civilian's arrest for trespassing, which, under California law, a civilian may make an arrest for this type of misdemeanor. The property owner would have to go to the car with the deputies and say, pretty much, I arrest you for this crime, this misdemeanor that you are committing, I arrest you. And the deputies would have taken Davis into custody, but the property owner refused. The property owner just wanted Davis off their property. The deputies called for a tow truck to get Davis's car out of the ditch. They searched it thoroughly before the arrival of the tow truck and did not find any evidence of anyone else in the car. The only possible violation was an open container of beer, but Davis was not driving at the time of the deputies' contact, and mere possession of an open container was not illegal, and he was not drinking and driving, technically. Before Davis was allowed to leave, he was instructed to pour out the beer, and the deputies filled out a field investigation card with his information, and the FI card, field investigation, was filed. On November 28, 1993, the property owner was inspecting her property after loggers had partially cleared the area of trees. She discovered items that made her think they may be related to the kidnapping. She called the sheriff's office to report her discovery, and deputies and crime scene investigators were dispatched. A torn pair of ballet leggings were found that were later matched by the FBI crime laboratory to the other part of the leggings, which were taken as evidence on the night of the kidnapping. A review of the calls in the area the day of the kidnapping turned up the contact with Davis, who had only been identified because both deputies had filled out and filed the FI card, the field investigation card. If they didn't do that, they would have no idea who Davis was at the time. So good for them. Good police work. Once the identity of Davis was revealed, a palm print at the scene of the kidnapping was also traced to him. Authorities had been unable to match the partial print earlier due to poor quality of the print that was left. The Sonoma County Sheriff's Department, in cooperation with Petaluma Police and the FBI, launched a search of the property in the Pythian Road area during a heavy rainstorm. The first 2 days of the search were kept as low-key as possible, since Davis was under surveillance at an Indian rancheria near Ukiah, California. When nothing was found during the initial search, and the surveillance of Davis also produced no results, the decision was made to arrest him for the kidnapping of Klaas. They brought him in on a parole violation, though. While Davis was interrogated by Petaluma PD and the FBI, a massive search was launched on Friday, December 3rd. The Sonoma County Sheriff's Department was assisted by over 500 search team members from 24 agencies, coming from as far as Kern County, California, and Washoe, County, Nevada. The mutual aid effort was coordinated by the California State Office of Emergency Services, now known as the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services, FBI crime scene teams, and numerous other state and federal agencies. The search remains today as one of the largest ever conducted in California. The search continued through Saturday, December 4th. The search effort produced other items of evidence, but did not produce any evidence of human remains. The search was planned to continue on Sunday, December 5th, but on the evening of December 4th, Dick Davis confessed to kidnapping and murdering Klaas and led investigators to her body. He had buried her in a shallow grave just off of Highway 101, about a mile south of the city limits of Cloverdale, California. The gravesite is about 20 air miles, 20 miles as the bird flies, and about 30 road miles from the search site. Although Davis admitted to strangling Klaas to death, he refused to give investigators a timeline of the events from October 1st. Investigators thought he was fearful that both people who passed him would call the sheriff's department. It is believed that Davis killed Klaas before the arrival of deputies and hid her body in the thick brush on the hillside above where his car was stuck. Davis then waited for an undetermined period of time after being escorted back to Highway 12, about 1.5 miles from where his car was stuck, and drove back up to retrieve her body. He was reportedly out of breath, sweating profusely despite it being a cold night, and had twigs and leaves in his hair when he was contacted by deputies. It is also believed that Davis had chosen the grave site in advance, since it would not have been discovered by a casual observer. The gravesite area would be directly visible from Highway 101, but not the grave itself. Davis had to drive from the Indian Ranchera in Ukiah once a week to meet with his parole officer, and he would have seen any police activity in that area, the one where the gravesite was dug. Richard Allen Davis's trial became a spectacle in 1996, and rightfully so. The nation watched as this cold, remorseless man stood trial for the murder of an innocent girl. Davis made a mockery of these proceedings, taunting Polly's family, and even making an obscene gesture during his sentencing. His lack of remorse was infuriating, yet it served as a reminder of the kind of man he was, a predator with no conscience. A Santa Clara County jury rendered a death verdict on August 5, 1996. After the verdict was read, Davis stood and made an obscene finger gesture at the courtroom camera with both hands, fucking double middle finger to the courtroom camera. Fuck you guys. Probably some court TV. I wonder if there's a video of it. I have to look that one up. Later, at his formal sentencing, Davis read a statement during which he claimed Polly had said to him, "Just don't do me like my dad," right before he killed her. Fucking monster. Dick. Fucking dick. However, no evidence supports that Polly had ever been sexually abused by her father, Mark. An enraged Mark attempted to lunge at Davis, but was restrained by the bailiffs, leaving the courtroom to avoid causing further commotion. Yeah, I would fucking want to strangle the dude. Want to punch his face in and stab him repeatedly. If I was Mark, I'd want to kill Dick. Dick needs to fucking die. Judge Thomas C. Hastings proceeded to formally sentence Davis to death, saying, "Mr. Davis, this is always a traumatic and emotional decision for a judge. You have made it very easy today by your conduct." In July of 2006, Davis was found unconscious in his cell following an opiate overdose, but unfortunately was resuscitated. In 2009, on June 1st, the California Supreme Court upheld Davis's death sentence upon appeal. He had argued that his jailhouse confession was inadmissible because it was given without an attorney present. The court ruled this was justified by the public safety exception to Miranda versus Arizona. His lawyer, Philip Sherney, told reporters he intended to ask for a rehearing and that he would be lodging a habeas corpus appeal with state and federal courts. Today, Davis remains on California's death row in the Adjustment Center at San Quentin State Prison. The emotional toll this took on Polly's family was unimaginable. Her mother, Eve Nickel, and her father, Mark Klaas, both became advocates for child safety and victims' rights. Their efforts, alongside others, led to changes in California's criminal justice system. One of the most significant outcomes of this case was the implementation of California's 3 strikes law, which ensures that repeat violent offenders receive harsher sentences, theoretically preventing someone like Davis from being free to commit such atrocities. Dick Davis was sentenced to death for the murder of Polly Klaas, though as of today he remains on death row, like I had mentioned. This case serves as a haunting reminder that evil can walk among us, slipping through the cracks until it strikes. For Polly's family and the community of Petaluma, the pain never fully fades, but Polly's memory lives on. Her story has inspired efforts to make the world a safer place for children. The tragedy of Polly Klaas resonates deeply, not just in Petaluma, but across the nation. Her story serves as a stark reminder of the vulnerabilities faced by children and the urgent need for vigilance in protecting them. Protecting them. I don't know why I said it. I usually say protecting, not protecting. In the aftermath of this horrific crime, Polly's family transformed their grief into action, becoming advocates for child safety and victims' rights. They inspired California's 3 strikes law, designed to prevent repeat offenders from slipping through the cracks. While Polly's life was tragically cut short, her legacy continues to inspire change and empower communities to stand together against child exploitation and abduction. As we reflect on Polly Klaas's tragic story, it's essential to take action in our own lives and communities. Together, we can make a difference in the fight against child abduction and exploitation. I encourage you to get involved in local initiatives focused on child safety and advocacy. Both of Polly's parents would open foundations in her name. The Polly Klaas Foundation is still running, which is under her mother, or her mother is involved in the Polly Klaas Foundation, and the Klaas Kids Foundation, I believe, is set to close this year, but had ran for the past 30 years due to her father, Mark, who was actively involved in many cases of finding children throughout the nation. Consider supporting organizations like the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, NCMEC, which works tirelessly to protect children and assist in the search for the missing. Their resources and programs provide vital support for families facing these unimaginable circumstances. You can visit their website at missingkids.org to learn more about how you can help. By staying informed, sharing information, and advocating for children's safety, we can honor Polly's memory and strive to create a world where all children can feel safe and protected. Let's work together to shine a light in the darkness and ensure that no child story ends too soon. That's all for today, though. Thank you for joining me on this difficult, rough, emotional journey through the tragic story of Polly Klaas and the crimes of Dick Davis, Richard Allen Davis. I'm Travis Fenn, and this is The Shadows, part of Beneath the Shadows. I appreciate you being here. Stay safe, stay aware, and take care. Peace.
Bow, wow, wow. Bow, bow, wow.